Bajan case study is an in-depth, detailed examination of Pico Tenerife, adjoining Cove Bay and Little Bay, which is captured and framed in publication 283 in 12 chapters and ventilated in podcasts 150 in ISBN 978-976-96-82412. According to nationalgeographic.org, I quote, "In a time when the ocean is threatened by climate change and pollution, coastlines are eroding and entire species of marine life are at risk of extinction." End quote. I hasten to state for the record that although I am not an ecologist, geologist, nor an oceanographer, but an author, cinematographer, media arts specialist, licensed cultural practitioner, podcaster, and publisher who has a cognitive bias towards Bajan landmarks because I am a Bajan who is passionate about things cultural in this environment. Therefore, I will make every effort to emulate the ecologist, the geoscientist, and the oceanographer by studying the physical, chemical, and biological features of the ocean, its ancient history, its current condition, its future, helping to protect the planet by studying it, learn from it, and predicting what the future will bring, has influenced me intellectually to proffer a Bayesian case study because this thinking, which exudes from my cognitive development, has to do with how I think, explore, and even figure things out. The locale of this conversation takes place within a Bajan's ecological, geological, and oceanography environment, which tells and illustrates my story about Bajan landmarks. Geologically, this environment allows me to gain concrete, contextual, in-depth knowledge about Barbados's northern terrace seaward island slope on a tectonically rising scrap, which has the capacity for exploration and an analysis of the key characteristics, meanings, and implications of Pico Tenerife, adjoining Cove Bay and Little Bay. These Bajan landmarks undoubtedly captivate the elements of nature from different angles, especially when juxtaposed against art, color, form, hue, line, shape, space, texture, tints, tones, scale, proportion, unity, variety, rhythm, mass, shape, space, balance, volume, perspective, and depth, which appears to be older than Methuselah. Simply put, this idiom implies that the same in this text is as old as Methuselah, and metaphorically comports itself as a simile, which is still a phrase that compares these Bajan landmarks like the elements of art, imputing that they are extremely old, behaving themselves as a harmonious ensemble for generations with colors complementing one another within a geological, ecological, and oceanography context. Briefly and historically, according to Kevin Kratchik, I quote, "Barbados has been pushing upward from the seabed for hundreds of thousands of years, probably fairly steadily. At the same time, sea levels have been rising and falling against it as climate has warmed and cooled, leaving footprints via the formation or death of the corals. The island embodies a relatively accessible chronology of past climate swings. Decoding their exact timing and magnitude may help researchers project how far seas will rise during our current age of human-induced climate change. Geologists have been intrigued by Barbados's fossil corals since at least the 1840s. In cross-section, the island looks like a staircase composed of successively higher cliffs and terraces as one moves inland. In many places, cliffs reach up dozens of feet, terminating neatly in a plateau which then runs into another cliff further on. Some scientists long argued that the island formed all at once, but for others, the staircase formation suggested a gradual rising process, with each successively higher cliff and terrace formed by wave action. In the 1960s, chemical isotopes used for measuring the ages of rocks showed that the latter was the case. However, according to funbarbados.com, the topography of Barbados is divided mainly into the limestone lands and Scotland district. End quote. According to Marceline Brown, I quote, Pico Tenerife is located in Sindussi, the most northern parish of the island near Cove Bay. It is described as an unusually shaped white cliff which rises from the sea in stark grandeur. The Pico Tenerife is a rocky cape on the northeastern coast of the island of Barbados. The scene at Cove Bay is a combination of rugged yet astounding beauty as you watch the booming surf barrel towards the bay. As you walk across the undulating cliff face, it's easy to note the irregularity of the landscape created by thousands of years of crashing waves and fresh brisk winds. End quote. Pico Tenerife, according to Wikipedia, I quote, is like storytelling because it is the social and cultural component that has activity for global citizens sharing stories, sometimes with improvisation, theatrics, or embellishment. Every culture, including Barbados, has its own stories or narratives which are shared as a means of entertainment, education, cultural preservation, or instilling moral values. Pico Tenerife, according to Wikipedia, I quote, choral tradition, sometimes referred to as oral culture or oral lore, is cultural material and traditions transmitted orally from one generation to another. It appears that culture helps us Bajans to make sense of our social worlds and shapes our actions, thoughts, and feelings, especially Cove Bay, Little Bay, and Pico Tenerife. End quote. The trees and plants, according to greenvista.com, I quote, normally need only a tiny amount of sodium for optimal health. But when large quantities of salt seep into the ground, it stops plants from taking up other nutrients such as potassium and calcium, leading to unhealthy plants. End quote. According to R. Ian Harker, I quote, the said tree trunks, which indicate some type of curvature, are often curved as a result of external factors, including catastrophic events, the availability of light, and oil creep. End quote. That said, adjacent to Cove Bay lays the mystique of Pico Tenerife, an imposing landmark on the northeast coast of the island. If you allow your eyes to wander To the top of this cliff face, there is a rocky peak which stands at an elevation of just over 300 feet or 100 meters in height, called Pico Tenerife. This coral limestone summit is not an accessible landmark from Cove Bay, but it is a grand and extraordinary feature that is enjoyed by many who visit this very popular picnic spot. It is a fascinating visual, and legend has it that this pinnacle allegedly achieved its name by being the first point of land directly northeast of Spain's island Tenerife. There's a perception that the rustic colors at Cove Bay, Little Bay, and Pico Tenerife are a collection that features timeless, picturesque colors that work harmoniously together, making Cove Bay, Little Bay, and Pico Tenerife inviting, especially viewers and clays are working harmonious ensemble for generations with colors complementing one another and captivating the elements of nature. On very clear days, Cove Bay lends its dramatic beauty to the naked eye as the entire coastal eastern landscape, presumably as far as the East Point Lighthouse in St. Philip, can be seen and photographed. Pico Tenerife is neither a bay nor a beach, but an intriguing landmark on the northeast coast of Barbados in the parish of St. Peter. According to Wikipedia, I quote, Pico Tenerife is also characterized as a cape. However, according to worldatlas.com, the difference between a bay, a gulf, and a cove are coastal landforms with some similarity and some distinct features that distinguish them from each other. These landforms are created through complex geological processes, including plate tectonics and coastal erosion. The major difference between a bay and a cape is a bay is a body of water while a cape is a landform. Capes can be any excursion of land, whether that be a peninsula or a point. Bays are areas of water where the land slopes inward. A bay and a gulf are almost similar, except that a bay is smaller than a gulf. The latitude of Pico Tenerife is 13.27917 and longitude 59.57341. According to Barbados.org, I quote, Little Bay is located on the northeast coast of Barbados. It is a unique spot with interesting pools, breathtaking scenery, and magnificent blowholes. Set among the rugged cliffs that are typical of this part of the island, Little Bay is truly a little heaven. Nature has created a small swimming pool carved out of the rock, and this pool is safe for swimming. Beyond the rocks, the waves are powerful, smashing into the rocks and creating lovely blowholes that spout high into the air. A climb onto the cliffs overlooking Little Bay provides a wonderful view of the bay and the northern coastline. But be sure to wear shoes as the rocks are quite sharp. Just a minute's drive away is Cove Bay. According to visitbarbados.org, I quote, Little Bay is one of the much adored attractions in St. Lucie for many because of its incredible views. There is a natural mystic that exists as you absorb the quintessentially undulating sea-carved limestone platforms appear to be an arid, golden, partially weathered, beaten cliff top. And as you walk across what can, upon first glance at Little Bay, these sea rock cliff top formations add a prehistoric type of patina to Little Bay, and the rolling, boisterous Atlantic Ocean adds even more gusto to this small haven, especially as the surf surges through the blowholes that have formed through the coral limestone from the persistent and intense wave action. On a very balmy, radiant day, from these cliff tops, you will be able to view the impressive spectacle of the edgy coastal seascape, which highlights for miles the northeastern coast of Barbados. This mesmerizing vista is wonderful for you to capture the pearl, effervescent sea caps that playfully frolic and crash into each other while others race against each other to pound against the coastal crags. Within the crescent of the bay, thrill seekers at times decide to fuel their adrenaline as they dip and or sit in the cooling rolling waters of the naturally formed wading sea rock pools there. The continuous triumphant chorus of the crashing waves on the spectacularly jagged bluffs within a shot of these sea rock basins is one that can place you in a state of zen whilst wading. Pleasantly fond memories of this sandy lagoon crescent can easily remain with you from the seashells in some unique formations that would wash ashore in the smaller curling tide. End quote. According to BarbadosPocketGuide.com, I quote, Little Bay on the east coast of Barbados is bordered by rolling limestone hills. The magnificent Atlantic Ocean crashes onto the coarse sandy beach area in a tiny piece of paradise set amidst low rugged cliffs. End quote. According to BarbadosPocketGuide.com, I quote, The sea is powerful and dangerous further out beyond the rocks, with crashing waves, surging surf, and enveloping sea mists, and it is here that you can see the real attraction of Little Bay in Barbados, these spectacular blowholes. Over the centuries, the burial waves of the Atlantic Ocean have smashed into the rocks and cliffs along this Barbados coastline, ultimately sculpting jagged cliffs and sea waves. The force of the ocean as it continues to slam into these naturally formed vertical structures and caves is eventually ejected in volatile explosions of water and spray that spout high into the air. The crashing waves experienced at Little Bay on the east coast of Barbados are mostly commonly caused by wind. Wind-driven waves or surface waves are created by the friction between wind and surface water. As wind blows across the surface of the ocean or a lake, the continual disturbance creates a wave crest. End quote. According to oceanservice.noaa.gov, in addition, I quote, wavelength is affected by wind speed with duration of how long the wind blows, and fetch, which is the distance over water that the wind blows in a single direction. If wind speed is slow, only small waves result, regardless of wind duration or fetch. End quote. According to eos.org, I quote, one of the processes driving the exchange between the atmosphere and water is the formation of sea spray. Sea spray experienced at Little Bay on the east coast of Barbados are aerosol particles formed from the ocean, mostly by ejection into Earth's atmosphere by bursting bubbles at the air-sea interface. Sea spray contains both organic matter and inorganic salts that form sea salt aerosol. At Little Bay, east coast Barbados, when the waves break, blowing sea spray everywhere, I saw an observable physical phenomenon happening, which is reminiscent of, according to phonetimes.co.kr, I quote, whales blowing the warm and moist air that has formed into their lungs, out through their blowholes. When this air comes out, it gets combined with cold air, and that forms a huge stream of vapor. It makes the whales look like they are squirting water. Breaching, a leap out of the water, exposing the majority of a whale or dolphin's body. These actions form part of their culture. End quote. According to Barbados.org, the east coast of Barbados is well known for its rugged beauty. The Atlantic rollers break on the large rocks at sea to form beautiful mist and foam. Technically, Barbados is completely surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean. The misconception usually comes because the west coast is so much calmer than the east. It is the eastmost island in the Caribbean and completely surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean. Barbados does not share a border with any country. End quote. Before I made the decision to press the shutter on my camera to release so that it opens to capture and form Pico Tenerife, adjoining Cove Bay and Little Bay, however, as an author, cinematographer, media arts specialist, licensed cultural practitioner, podcaster, and publisher who was exposed to art, cinematography, photography, geoscience, and oceanography during my academic tenure as a sophomore in the pursuance of a bachelor's degree in media arts at New Jersey City University. Theoretically, I was also exposed to a wide range of topics, including physical aspects of the Earth, such as its composition, structure, and processes, to learn about its past, present, and future, studying the materials that make up the Earth, the features and structures found on Earth, as well as the processes that act upon them, namely marine life, ecosystems, ocean circulation, plate tectonics, and the geology of the seafloor, the chemical and the physical properties of the ocean. I was exposed theoretically and practically to art at the General Certificate of Education, Advanced and Ordinary level. These lived experiences of enlightenment combined together with basic sciences, art, and knowledge I have gained from the various disciplines during study as a practitioner has caused my skills to grow exponentially and drive my behavior in the area of education and research. On reflection, as a result of these courses, I was enlightened because of what I found valuable in the fields of geography, engineering, chemistry, urban planning, and environmental studies, among others, was to appreciate the importance of this study of the Earth according to geology.com. I quote, "Understanding Earth's history so as to better foresee how events and processes of the past might influence the future." End quote. I am now equipped academically and technically to navigate and analyze similar Bajan landmarks like Pico Tenerife, adjoining Cove Bay and Little Bay. It was against this backdrop, coupled with the fact that I was a considerable distance from these Bajan landmarks when I employed my super telephoto lens to capture and frame explicit details, since it dramatically magnify and pull in the distant Pico Tenerife, adjoining Cove Bay. Finally, I must confess that a Bajan case study is an in-depth, detailed examination of Pico Tenerife, adjoining Cove Bay and Little Bay, which is captured and framed in publication 283 in 12 chapters and ventilated in podcasts 150 in ISBN 978 976 96 82412.